Laika was so furious of fighting with Louis that she became impatient, trying hard to get a grasp with Gabriel. But she can't get close to him. Every time Louis threw stones and logs at her, she would throw them back to where Louis was standing, but they were getting further apart, and the impact was getting stronger because it now came with a shock wave. Gabriel struggled to get up because the shock wave hitting them was so strong. The remaining strength he had needed to be used to return to David's house to treat Jacob immediately and prevent any further harm. Even though it was difficult, Gabriel crawled away from Louis. Louis couldn't leave him behind because Laika would approach him to seize the vial he was carrying. Suddenly, David appeared in front of Gabriel amidst the flying fire and stones. Laika couldn't get close to them because of Louis's relentless attacks. He didn't give Laika a chance to approach Gabriel. Louis skillfully dodged Laika's attacks. Without delay, David lifted Gabriel onto his back, and when Laika saw David, she screamed out of extreme anger at him, shouting his name while continuously dodging and attacking Louis. David managed to escape through the chaos and fire, carrying Gabriel's body. They ran fast away from the scene, but could still hear the loud explosions resulting from Laika and Louis's battle. However, David didn't take the road. Trees fell as they passed due to David's swift movements, plowing through the earth while carrying Gabriel. Gabriel noticed that David's power was growing stronger. He didn't speak but just watched David's path, their powers growing stronger over time like David's. But as they neared the lampposts, Vasper suddenly appeared in front of them. David stopped abruptly. Vasper stood in front of David with a dangerous smile and intense gaze. The three of them stared at each other, exchanging intensified, but David's gaze could kill Vasper. "Get out of my way, Vasper. If you want a fair fight, wait until I bring Gabriel home, because I will come back for you. But if you're a coward, start the fight now, while my companion is weak," said David insultingly towards Vasper. However, Vasper just laughed in response. He didn't speak, he just stepped aside and signaled that they could pass. David didn't hesitate. He quickly entered his property and went into his house, leaving Vasper behind, just observing their every move. He will wait. Inside the living area where Jacob lay on the sofa, looking as if he were dead asleep. He also laid Gabriel on the sofa. Gabriel groaned from the pain of his burns, suffered from Laika. The expressions on David's face were surely in pain as he looked at his two friends. Laika was not an easy opponent to defeat, probably because she wasn't human like them. "I need to go back there, Gabriel, because Louis is alone now." "Jake hasn't returned yet," said David as he stood looking at Gabriel. But anger could be detected in his voice, his teeth clenched with rage towards Laika. "I did everything earlier, but Jacob still hasn't woken up," David explained further. Then Gabriel raised his right hand and showed David the vial. "Antidote," Gabriel said, groaning. Without delay, David took it and opened it. He approached Jacob and dropped 3 drops of the red liquid into his mouth. David couldn't wait as he stood next to Jacob. Gabriel also watched Jacob closely. After a few seconds, they saw Jacob's fingers move. The faces of Gabriel and David lit up as they watched Jacob. Meanwhile, Louis struggled to fend off Laika's attacks. He noticed that the Mondragons were growing stronger as time passed. The Mondragons would become even more powerful if Laika survived this fight. Laika continued to defend against Louis's attacks, which he made using water from a small stream. The chaos around them was indescribable, with trees fallen everywhere. Thanks to his power to manipulate water, he could prevent everything around them from burning. He was able to extinguish the fires in the forest. Louis moved his hands like a master conductor, manipulating large stones, wood, and water to throw at Laika. However, before they could reach her, she would throw them back at Louis. Her anger was fueled by Louis's water attacks that extinguished the fires she was trying to spread around the forest, including David's house. Louis's power allowed him to manipulate the things around him, including water, which he used to douse the burning trees. Laika's rage towards Louis was intense, as he kept her from moving towards David's house. Louis followed her closely, ensuring she couldn't escape her spot. He was likely guarding her to prevent her from reaching David's house. Her only option was to transform into an eagle to fly away. Suddenly, Laika transformed into an eagle and soared upwards. The vines in the forest chased her as if they had minds of their own, trying to catch her even as she flew. Laika breathed fire at the vines chasing her, but whirlpools of water followed, extinguishing her flames. She circled above Lewis, looking for an opening to attack him, but struggled to find one. The fierce cry of an eagle echoed throughout the forest, showing its anger at Lewis, who continuously countered with water whirlpools. The destruction of the forest was immense, with water and fire clashing both on the ground and in the air, showcasing the power of the two beings. Laika's anger towards Lewis fueled her relentless fire attacks, but Lewis skillfully dodged each one. Despite her furious assault, he remained agile, evading her flames with ease. In a sudden move, Lewis used the vines to catch Laika, gripping her tightly and hurling her down and throw her far away. When she landed, the impact was so strong that she reverted to her human form. Her clothes were torn, and a deep wound on her side bled from hitting a large rock. Blood trickled from her mouth, but she rose with a defiant grin, her anger intensifying. The vines chased after her, wrapping around her body and neck, strangling her. Laika struggled fiercely, her body igniting in flames that burned the vines, but more kept coming, binding her relentlessly. Each time she burned through the vines, new ones replaced them, and her efforts seemed futile. Lewis stood amidst the chaos, his hands moving with precision and power, directing the elements with mastery. Water and fire clashed in a spectacular display, creating a scene of immense destruction and power. The forest around them was a battlefield, with trees ablaze and water whirlpools crashing against the flames. The ground shook from the force of their powers colliding, creating shockwaves that echoed through the air. Laika's body radiated heat as her flames intensified, scorching the vines that held her. Her eyes blazed with fury as she continued to fight back, refusing to be subdued. The fire around her grew more intense, casting an orange glow that illuminated the night sky. She let out a powerful scream, and a massive burst of fire erupted from her body, burning away the vines momentarily. Lewis, sensing the shift in her power, summoned a massive wave of water from the nearby stream, directing it towards Laika. The water crashed over her, dousing the flames and drenching the forest floor. Steam rose as the water met the fire, creating a dense fog that enveloped them both. In the midst of the fog, the silhouette of Lewis's form moved with calculated precision, his eyes locked on Laika. She struggled to see through the mist, her senses heightened as she prepared for his next move. The air crackled with energy, the tension between them palpable. Lewis extended his hand, and the ground beneath Laika shook violently. Large rocks and debris lifted from the earth, floating around him as he prepared to strike. With a swift motion, he hurled the rocks towards her. Laika, reacting quickly, transformed back into her eagle form and took to the sky, dodging the oncoming barrage. She circled above him, searching for an opening. Her wings flapped powerfully, the air around her shimmering with heat as she prepared another fiery assault. Lewis, undeterred, continued to manipulate the elements, his control over the battlefield unwavering. The clash between their powers created a spectacle of light and sound, a battle of elemental forces that seemed to have no end. The forest around them was a scene of chaos, with water and fire battling for dominance. As Laika swooped down, aiming to strike Lewis with her fiery talons, he summoned a barrier of water, deflecting her attack. The impact created a shockwave, sending ripples through the air. Both combatants paused momentarily, catching their breath, their eyes locked in a fierce stare. The battle was far from over, and the forest bore witness to their extraordinary clash of powers. Each moment was a testament to their strength and determination, as neither was willing to concede defeat. The night was filled with the sounds of their struggle, a continuous and dramatic fight that seemed destined to reshape the very landscape around them. In the distance, Vasper gazes upon the battle between his sibling, Laika, and Lewis. He is well aware of Laika's combat skills but is impressed by Lewis's ability to hold his ground against her. He sees Laika's rage fueled by Lewis's presence. Standing afar, Vasper remains within his shield, making sure his enemies cannot sense his power or presence, especially Laika. But dawn is approaching, and with the rising sun, Laika's power will weaken, just as his own will. It won't be long before Laika's strength fades with the sunrise. Suddenly, to his surprise, David appears before him. Vasper responds with a mere smile to David's sudden appearance. Amidst the fierce battle between Laika and Lewis, David's presence signals another impending confrontation. However, Vasper has no intention of fighting David now, despite his deadly demeanor. "Vasper, why do you merely watch your sibling fight Lewis?" David asks, his stance wary, not trusting Vasper's presence. Vasper grins at his question, eyes still on Laika and Lewis. "David, how did you know I was here? Inside my shield? It's like your barrier around your home. How did you sense me here?" Vasper's voice is calm, yet David hears every word clearly. Vasper is curious how David felt his power and presence, a method he uses to hide from his family and other powerful beings. Yet now, David has found him. He looks at David, reading his eyes, waiting for his explanation. "Vasper, why did you enter my home and approach Chanty, yet for the second time, you did not take her? Even with the shield around my place, how did you manage to get in while your sister struggled to break through it? I'm impressed by your power. After all, you are the heir of the Mondragon. Should I be surprised?" he added, and Vasper responded with sardonic smile. "Look at your sister Laika," David says, glancing at the ongoing relentless fight between Laika and Lewis. "Look at her, trying to take Chanty to your father. Does she know about all this? What is your game? Betraying your family for yourself?" David adds. Vasper's gaze sharpens, piercing David's with cold intensity. David laughs at Vasper's reaction, a laugh only they can hear. "Vasper, whatever your game is, what will your family think? Do they know your plans? Should your sister know? This wouldn't be happening to Laika if you had taken Chanty from the start. Your game is puzzling, yet I admire you for fighting fairly. Are you waiting for Chanty to turn 18 to fight her or us?" David asks, as Vasper remains silent, his icy, serious gaze fixed on David. "David, you don't need to know my plans. Just do your job, and we won't fight now. I've been on this planet longer than you. Do your job, and I'll do mine. If I want something, don't stand in my way, or we'll clash. Despite our differences, I respect you, David. I see no reason to remove you from my path for now," Vasper replies, his voice calm but firm, clear in David's ears. Suddenly, Vasper disappears, leaving David in awe for Vasper's words. In a few seconds, David snaps back to reality, seeing the dawn breaking. He runs towards Lewis and Laika, ready to attack Laika as her power wanes with the sunrise. Laika, knowing David has arrived, glimpses the nearing dawn. Aware of David's capabilities, she realizes time is against her. She must escape before the sun fully rises. Amid their fierce clash, David moves to attack Laika, but Lewis restrains her with vines and wood, only to see them burn into ashes from Laika's fire. As David closes in on Laika, she suddenly transforms into an eagle, soaring high with a powerful scream, disappearing from sight. Both David and Lewis are left staring at the brightening sky, stunned by the speed of events. The battlefield, now unrecognizable, is a mess of charred land and scattered boulders, a testament to Laika's fiery rage. The surrounding forest is reduced to ashes, but large rocks remain scattered. "This will surely become big news in our area," David remarks, surveying the burnt landscape. "Lewis, can you arrange these large stones to block the path to my place? Make it look like a landslide," David instructs Lewis, noticing his burnt, wounded body. Lewis, with his long hair singed and clothes burnt, nods at David's command and begins his task. Meanwhile, David hurries back to his villa, his heart pounding with urgency. As he entered the grand living room, he found Jacob and Gabriel waiting for him. Their faces were etched with worry and anticipation. David wasted no time, recounting everything he had witnessed, including his enigmatic conversation with Vasper. Vasper was there, watching the battle, David began, his voice steady but intense. "But there's a mystery in his actions we can't ignore." Jacob leaned forward, his face pale from his recent ordeal. What could Vasper be planning? Why was he just watching? Gabriel, whose body bore the marks of recent battle, added, "It's as if Vasper is playing a game we're not yet privy to. His actions are cryptic." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Lewis, his presence commanding as always. Despite the burns and wounds that marred his skin, he carried himself with a calm strength. The others turned to him, expressions of admiration crossing their faces. "You fought well against Laika," David praised. "Your control over your powers is remarkable." Lewis nodded, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips despite the pain. "Thank you. But we all know that defeating Laika requires more than just power. Only the Sword of Destiny can truly vanquish the Mondragon. And that sword is in Chanty's hands," Jacob finished, his voice tinged with doubt. "Can she complete her mission before the Mondragon reach her? We don't even know if she's ready." A heavy silence settled over them, the weight of their uncertain future pressing down. Suddenly, the air shimmered, and Jake materialized through teleportation. He looked around, startled by the sight of his comrades, battered and weary. "You all look like hell," Jake remarked, his eyes widening at the sight of their dirty, blood-streaked faces, their bodies marked by battle. Gabriel's skin was almost completely burnt, Lewis bore the signs of a fierce fight, and Jacob, still weak from Laika's poisonous kiss, struggled to sit up straight. David managed a wry smile. "We've had a rough night. What news do you bring?" Jake replied. "She's safe, for now. But we can't let our guard down. The Mondragon will come for her, and she needs to be ready." Gabriel, his voice rough, said, "We must prepare her. If she falters, all hope is lost. The Sword of Destiny is our only chance." Lewis, ever the strategist, added, "We need to fortify our defenses and train harder. Chanty must be protected at all costs until she's ready to wield that sword." As they discussed their plans, the first light of dawn filtered through the windows, casting a hopeful glow on their determined faces. Despite their wounds and the uncertainty that lay ahead, a sense of resolve filled the room. David, looking at each of his friends, said, "We fight for Chanty, for our future. Vasper's game is his own, but we have our mission. We must succeed." With renewed determination, they began to plan, their minds focused on the battles yet to come, the mysterious strategies of Vasper, and the hope that Chanty would rise to her destiny. At noon, firefighters and police officers arrived, along with media personnel, to investigate reports from people who heard loud thunder and lightning the previous night. According to the reports, the sounds were unusually loud and came from the mountains near David's place. They saw many government agencies investigating the incident and noticed a large landslide in the area. Huge rocks had fallen from the mountains, causing the reports of an earthquake and loud thunder. Despite no rain, the landslide showed signs of heavy rain earlier. This became big news on the radio and TV across the city. They also saw David's property near the landslide site, but it was inaccessible by truck or car. They were amazed by the villa nestled in the forest. The massive damage from the landslide surrounding the forest was evident. There were signs of fire due to the ashes scattered around. They thought it might have been caused by a lightning strike, which set the trees on fire, followed by heavy rain accompanied by an earthquake, leading to the landslide that ravaged the mountain and forest. They were interested in interviewing the owner of the villa about the incident, but they could only reach it by helicopter, or by crossing the dangerous landslide area on foot, which was not safe for ordinary people. Through a telescope, they confirmed that the villa was undamaged, so they left it alone. David and his companions were well aware of this news. They sat around the dining table, eating silently, each absorbed in their own thoughts. Jake looked at his companions, still healing from the battle injuries against Laika. "Tomorrow, your wounds will heal fully," Jake said seriously while eating. "I noticed Jacob has already recovered," Jake added with a slight grin, not looking at Jacob but at his plate. His teasing tone was evident to his companions, especially Jacob. They laughed quietly to avoid making Jacob angry. Gabriel, still in pain from his burns, laughed too, recalling Laika's story. "Laika said Jacob was the sweetest lips she ever tasted, and she wanted me to tell you," Gabriel said nonchalantly, avoiding Jacob's eyes. Their laughter grew, except for Jacob, who maintained a poker face. The dining area filled with laughter as they joked about their appearances and injuries, especially Gabriel, who had suffered the most in their fight with Laika. After the laughter, silence returned, and their expressions turned serious, especially David. He looked at each of his companions. Chanty can't return here, Jake. Laika already knows this place. Vasper or Laika must not follow you, David said, focusing on Jake. Jake and his companions listened intently. They had finished eating but remained seated. Gabriel watched Jacob for his reaction, and Jacob, with serious eyes, looked back. Marco and Justin won't leave her unprotected. What should we do about Chanty? Jake asked. Everyone turned to David, waiting for his answer. She needs training. In a few months, she'll turn 18. Before she finds the sword of destiny, she must learn to wield a sword, David added, looking into their eyes seriously. Jacob, you will train Chanty, David commanded Jacob, snapping him out of his thoughts. Gabriel also looked at Jacob, gauging his reaction. He knew Jacob had feelings for Chanty. Jake is here, David. Why me? Jacob asked, knowing he would struggle to control his feelings if he spent more time with Chanty. Everyone looked at Jacob, surprised by his refusal. You're more skilled with a sword, Jacob. I've seen you use one once, but not recently, David said in a relaxed tone with a hint of praise. The others nodded in agreement. Jacob stayed silent to avoid raising their suspicions. But Jake kept his gaze on Jacob, sensing something was off but keeping it to himself, lacking concrete evidence. David's face grew more intense as he addressed his team. We need to ensure Shanta's safety at all costs. Laika and Vasper are powerful, and they won't stop until they find her, he said firmly. The atmosphere in the room turned solemn, everyone understanding the gravity of the situation. Jake leaned forward, breaking the silence. We must plan carefully. If we fail, Shanta's life will be in danger, not just her but this planet will be in chaos, he said, his voice steady but filled with concern. Jacob, though reluctant, knew the responsibility he had to bear. I'll do it, Jacob finally said, his voice low but resolute. His decision was met with nods of approval from his companions. They knew Jacob was the best choice, even if he doubted himself. With the plan set, they began to discuss the next steps. Training Chanty would not be easy, but it was necessary for her survival. They all pledged to protect her, no matter the cost. As the meeting ended, the weight of their mission hung heavily over them, but their determination to succeed was stronger than ever.